Here inside PyProjects, inside data samples, we're looking at example 4. And what we've done here is included null value. Let's import this and put it in a variable called missing. We'll see that pandas interprets that NA missing value as not a number. Now let's create a Boolean sister array and output that. And we find that null value here as expected. Now there is another argument that we can use with the read CSV, and that is to convert other values in our data set into NA values as well. Currently evening is not an empty, but once we run this, evening will become an empty. Let's output this, and now you'll see that value has changed. And this would work on numerical values too. Let's change 14 to an empty. And since this is in a list format, we can also do 10. And we can also do this string. As long as we have a comma, we can do that string as well. Here we've been using a list to define our values, but we can also use indexing within our rows in a Python dictionary. And you'll see this behaves as you would expect. This link will take you to the pandas documentation where there's information on many more arguments that work with the read CSV method. But right now let's talk about the display settings in pandas. In the case of this data frame, which we've called missing, we only have 6 columns and 3 rows. But oftentimes we'll get data frames that are so long we can't see them from end to end, and we can change the settings in pandas to modify what we see. So here we're using this options.display.maxRows, and we're setting maximum rows to 2. So we should only see 2 rows if we run this. And indeed it only shows us the 2 rows, the first and the last. We can do the same thing with max columns, and we can set those to 2 also. So let's run this, and you'll see it shows us just the first and the last. Now what if we want to reset that? We can just say reset option and then define which option we want to reset. Let's run this, and it gives us all of our rows again. And likewise for columns, we can use that same reset option method and define that it's columns we'd like to restore this time. And then our display settings are returned to the default. Even more explicitly, when we import with read CSV, we can tell pandas exactly how many rows we'd like to see. So let's run this. And it gives us only 10 rows from this example 6 CSV file. Let's remove this and run this again. And it tells us there are 10,000 rows here. But using this nRows argument, we're only viewing 10 of them when we bring this in. Let's talk about the problem of large sets of data where we may actually overload our processing power by bringing in 1 million or 20 million data points. We have a solution in pandas called chunking, where basically we break the content into certain chunks and we never bring the entire content into memory at the same time. And chunking creates iterable objects so that we can iterate over a small chunk, and the current chunk does not persist in memory while we iterate over the next chunk, and on like that. Now we've already determined that this has 10,000 rows in it, and what we're doing here is we're bringing this into pandas with a chunk size of 1,000. So we should get 10 chunks from this. And so this has been parsed into an iterable object that we can loop over now. And that's what we're doing in the next code cell. Let's describe what we're doing here before we run this. We're going into the first chunk and we're taking every key. See, we're talking about the keys here, and we're grabbing the value count of this key. So we're saying how many times does L occur in the first chunk, and we're adding them together. So for each key we're adding together the value counts in each chunk, and by the time we get to the 10th chunk we will have counted up how many L's we have And we're putting a fill value in here because we are adding. And you'll probably remember that if we run into any empty values in here, the end result is it will return all nulls and we'll get nothing back. So we were just filling it with a 0 so we can make this work. So let me run this. And then let's sort this so that the item from the keys column with the largest count will be at the top. So let's sort that. Let's see the total elements that we get. Well, it says there's 36 different symbols here. So let's explore this. We'll grab the first 5 of those. And it appears that the E symbol had 368, and the X symbol had 364. Let's check all 36 of them. And let's see the total sum of everything that we've returned. Yeah, we returned 10,000 items, which makes sense because we knew that we had 10,000 of them here. We iterated through these without bringing the entire 10,000 at a time into memory. We only brought 1,000 at a time. We looped through those and added them to this empty series total 10 times to get the complete value count.